Eldridge, an American sociologist, once said that it's the thoughts and intents of the heart that shapes a person's life. For us entrepreneurs to be an aspiring young founders who wants to achieve a life of greatness, so what then is the intent and thoughts that we need to think about to be able to achieve our dream life? We live in an overhyped culture where people put so much premium on what we do and what we don't do. Upon meeting you for the first time, a lot of friends would say, "What do you do?" And if you happen to go to a great school, to a great startup, or you have your own side business ever since you're young, they would be like, "Oh my gosh, like that is super, super cool." So with people valuing the great and you doing more, it devalues the small and the mundane oftentimes that are just as valuable. People expect you to work longer hours, put in more hard work for you to achieve more. But what it makes you, if you're not careful, is an anxious, overwhelmed, and exhausted entrepreneur. The world today is not what it used to. When products used to launch in 2 months, now it only takes 2 weeks. People like us are no longer staying in our workplace just for 5 years. We're staying in less than 1 year and trying to find something better. So in this age where we constantly crave for this drug of success, but it never satisfies, you are highly productive probably, but you're also highly anxious. You're highly passionate about certain things, but you're burning out just as fast. I grew up with 2 older sisters who are pretty accomplished and famous. And when we came home from school, we came from that Asian family that values so much on our grades. I would always be scared of showing my school grades to my parents because somehow in the back of my mind, I knew that their love is conditional upon my performance. So post-college growing up, it's becoming something that's ingrained in me, where what my parents think of me or what I think people think of me and their love for me is dependent upon my achievements and performance. So by the age of 16, I started my own NGO. By the time I was 18, this NGO, I got to represent it in the United Nations in New York. By the time I was 21, I started my own social enterprise called Liberty Society. By the age I was 22, just in 1 year's time, we almost got invested by a big 500 startup company. In the world's eyes, it may seem like I've got it all at such a young age. But again, this so-called drug of success that puts you in a rat race almost. You feel like you have to achieve by a certain age. You feel like if you only get this, you'll feel satisfied. It was an illusion. I wasn't. Though career-wise, I was professionally at an all-time high, emotionally, I was at a career all-time low as well. It wasn't until December of 2020, where my startup almost closed, that I had to rethink what success means for myself, and for me to be able to escape this hustle culture and the traps that it presents to me. So my hope is when I share these 3 pointers, it will help you find your journey. So let's unfold together the matter of the heart here. Number 1, redefining what matters. We have such narrow view of what success is that it's all about winning internally and it's all about you. But a bigger definition of success that I've learned is that it also matters that you put value on the people around you. For me, although I was at a career high and emotionally at a very low pace, it's because when I was achieving all these great things, I had no one to celebrate it with. I felt very lonely. Being on top is a lonely place, especially too because you've sacrificed so much relationship on your way there so that when you're already there, you realize this is not satisfying to what you imagine it would be and you have no one to celebrate it with. If only I had that margin for people, but how could I? I always came back home leaving myself exhausted because I didn't put enough margin in my life. My cup ran over. If only I had been more disciplined with myself, creating that rhythm. People always talk about balance, but oftentimes it's a rhythm. You need to set certain disciplines in your life for you to be able to meet people, go out there, put a cap on work, and stop work before you go to bed. And it's these types of things that I realize matters most because life is so much more than my work. At the end of the day, I don't want to win this success if I'm losing my soul, if I don't even know who I am anymore because I don't have friends and community to encourage me and to remind me of who I am apart from my work. Oftentimes, we pursue careers so much because we mistake it with our calling. My second point is separate career versus calling. A lot of people think that calling is like a lighting in the sky, that when you're walking down the street, then you would get it. That aha moment that makes you feel this is what life is all about. That oftentimes for us young entrepreneurs, we're taught you have to give your all. You gotta sacrifice your enjoyment. You gotta sacrifice relationships. You gotta sacrifice sleep for you to get there. But what we often fail to realize is that calling cannot be achieved in one day. We have to sleep. Our calling is also to rest. Our calling is also to our family. You know what? Your career changes, your calling doesn't. What you do changes, especially in this pandemic. You probably are losing your meaning, but you gotta separate your worth from what you do. Who are you apart from your work? Because when your career changes and what you do changes, who you are remains the same. I know myself apart from my work. I am a sister, I'm a daughter, I love running, I am highly ambitious about creating social justice and impact, and I love a good old coffee. These things don't change even when my career changes. So it's very important that you know who you are apart from your career. I experienced this idea personally when I didn't graduate from college. Dropped out from college my junior year, came back home, and for a year I thought, wow, my life is such a waste. I couldn't secure any job without a degree, so for 1 year I was only interning without any compensation. But you know what? Because I gave my best in that season of life, my calling was to faithfulness in that season, and the people who I have around me, those clients, those bosses, those partners that I get to meet from my old work became my current clients because they trust me and they see what I do even with what the little that I have. So that's the second part. Our calling is to faithfulness in who we have and what we have in front of us. But of course there are hiccups along the way. And my third point is, how do we redefine failure? If you're not careful with this, or you don't know how to redefine failure, a lot of entrepreneurs ended up taking their own life when their business closes because that's all they've worked for the 5 years or the 10 years of their life. And then when an investor fails to see the worth, or customers fail to see the worth of their product, because the products are so closely tied to their identity, they feel like their life is worthless. So how do we escape this mentality of you are overwhelmed by the problems that is presented to you? Again, with my own story of having closed my startup last year, there's this liberating truth that my mentor gave me. Hey, it's okay not to be the first time founder that made it to manage a startup that become an IPO. Or hey, it's okay if your startup failed for the first time. What founders don't publicize a lot of the time is the fact that startup fail. And they fail without the public knowing them. There's this assumption that because everything seems to be doing well, that everything is actually going well underneath it. My mentor also told me, Tom, when you fail, I was at a problem in my startup, and then I asked her, what do I do when I felt like I messed up? She told me, Tom, fail forward. I was like, what do you mean? Failing forward means that you're able to take the lessons that you have taken from the problem that you have and use it to propel you forward. The first feeling that I had when my startup almost closed is, what will my friend think of me? This feeling of shame became so strong, but I had to learn to tone down the voice of shame, instead use the problem and the lessons that I had to propel me forward, to not let me from just mulling in my mistakes, but taking it, reflecting it, and using it for me to fail forward. Secondly, my mentor also told me, hey, fail fast. Unless you become to normalize this problem of failure, it will be very, very hard for you and very slow for you to move on. So you gotta normalize it so that you're able to fail fast, to know that it's okay to fail and you're gonna fail again and again. So you just gotta fail fast and move on. So these become the building blocks of my view on failure. Life is all about learning journey. It's not about for me to try to collect trophies of accolades and accomplishment, but it's about me learning along the journey, for it is not a rat race that we are in. Your pace and my pace may be different. I'm not telling you to join me and create a startup when you're 23. You have your own journey, you have your own story, your own personality that only you can fulfill in this world, with the kind of people that will be around you to make that happen. Tying it all together, when you know what matters most, when you know the pace that you should go is not always the same with the pace other people around you are going. And number 3, when you're able to redefine failure and see what success really is for you to continue growing, then I think you'll be able to escape the hustle culture of becoming an anxious, overwhelmed, and exhausted entrepreneur or adults. Adam Grant quotes this: "Feeling embarrassed by your old work isn't a sign of incompetence. It's a mark of growth. Being critical of your past performance means you've raised your standard, refine your taste, or improve your judgment. It's a path to producing something better in the future." You know what? The world doesn't need more overworked and overwhelmed leaders. For you who are leaders to be, the world needs thoughtful, compassionate leaders who are full of self-security, compassion, and conviction. You can be a leader who tell others that their meaning is apart from their work. You can allow them to rest, have family time, and for them to find their worth in who they are as a person. You can raise a better generation who understand the bigger values of things, that your worth is more than just what you're accomplishing, but your worth is based on these values of doing justice, loving your neighbor, creating the world a better place, not simply from achieving, but also from showing that you're able to escape this hustle culture and rest and do things differently. No, it's not in this rat race that we are fighting and biting each other's neck for. We are in a marathon, all of us. We have different pace, but we're all going to the same goal. That is to create this world a better place.